Our time is way too precious to be going at something like you're playing. When you're talking about your livelihood, trying to drive sales, your business, your career. I posted a picture of myself complaining about having been growing my gray hair out for about a year, and I looked hideous, and it blew up. That account went from 300 to 97,000. My content went like this, like straight up. I feel like it's anecdotal, but I just don't think that it's coincidental. We've never been at a point in time where building in public has been more critical. The human aspect of what we're doing in our business is where we will build trust. Video had been shut down for us for those 2 years. My mom died suddenly. I'm now out another 8-10 months. My business is in a pickle.
What is the biggest BS that people get fed every day on LinkedIn about building a personal brand?
Oh my word. I have to pick one. Can't we have like a list? Can we have a BS list?
Yes, you can give a couple of options.
Yeah, because it changes a little bit. It depends on the context. Really, it depends on the context. But the one that I think I struggle with the most is the concept of just start and experiment. Because that really, I struggle with that one. Because our time is way too precious to be going at something like you're playing. You're not taking up a hobby here. It's not like, oh, I think I'm going to take up painting, where I'd say, by all means, just go at it, experiment, and see what happens. But when you're talking about your livelihood, trying to drive sales, your business, your career, there's other things to find your voice with and other ways to experiment that are not done in a way that could potentially harm the effort that you're making, or waste your time, or potentially set you up to think that what you're doing isn't working, or that your voice isn't valid, because we're looking for reactions, right? You put that thing out in the world, you do this post, you're looking for engagement, you're looking for feedback. That's why we talk. We talk to get feedback. We talk for reciprocation, for validation, for all these reasons. And if we don't get it, because you're randomly tossing things out to the world, it can just really set us up for failure. So I guess if I had to narrow it down, that one came front to mind. So I would say that probably is the one that really,
So let's dive into it a little bit.
Sure.
Because when somebody is just kind of starting out, obviously there is some level of like, we need to experiment with formats and we need to experiment with topics and kind of see like what people are resonating with. When you say like just start is not the best advice, what do you suggest that people do when they're getting started? How do people experiment more strategically versus, like you say, just kind of throwing shit at the wall and seeing what sticks?
So to me, I use the phrase just start. I tell people, make the first move. But as a strategist, my first move for you is not going to be throw out a random piece of content on social media. That, to me, is not your first step. Your first step is, let's explore this. For some people, it's like just even warming up to the idea, but reach out, get yourself educated on what it means, what it takes, like, what are you doing? Setting those goals. That's that first step. Putting things into articulation, whether it's written down or having conversation, perhaps it's with a coach, perhaps that's like too bold or too big of a step, but just getting yourself into the conversations with people that are already doing it, to me, that's a first step. That's taking an action. It's not just lobbing out a piece of content on social.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that makes sense. So you've been in the world of branding even before social media was the big thing that it is now. When you got started with social media, like you weren't focused on getting branding clients with social media. Is that correct?
Well, it's kind of a mixed bag, because it was part of our mix where we showed up on social media, but it was not a direct sales effort. So for us, it was brand awareness. So we would share wins of our clients. We'd share finished product, finished results, finished brands, results that we got for other people. So for us, it was purely brand awareness in the early days. It was also my very first parlay into social media was in 2000, late 2009, when we were going for the Pepsi Refresh grant. That was our first social media campaign. Now, prior to that, we'd helped other clients with their presence on social media, and we had a, low level lift on it. But in terms of really growing our brand and being out there or creating awareness around our brand and what we were doing, it started with that Pepsi Refresh grant.
So tell me a little bit about that. People probably have no idea what that is.
Yeah, so in 2009, Pepsi created this program called Pepsi Refresh, where they allocated hundreds of millions of, I think it was, oh, I forget, $20 million, maybe even more. I can't remember the exact number that they allocated, that they gave away out into the world for good ideas. And they had it across all different kinds of segments and sectors. And you had to put your idea forward, and then it was accepted. And in each category, there was a limited number. And for my category, there were 300. And then it was a social media, um, uh, kind of like Kickstarter, where you had to get people to vote for you, to support your idea. And it went on for 30 days. And that's what we did. We came out, we shared our stories through email, through social media. We were in live events, all kinds of different organic events. And we came in first place out of 300 people. And that included,
Wow.
schools, kids, like we're competing against organizations and efforts that had tens of thousands of people behind them because they were so well established. But so to date, that's I feel like one of my best social media campaigning efforts ever.
Very cool. So what did that mean for your business, the fact that you guys came in first place in
Yeah,
that
so
contest?
we won $50,000, and what the concept was integrating and stimulating the creative economy. And what we were doing was bringing people who were working in the creative sectors into public spaces, into business spaces. So how does typical corporate America work with the fine arts? How do they work with musicians? How do they do that? So that became very much a part of our business model. And we had a 5-year contemporary arts exhibition program where we brought people in from all around the world. We taught classes on branding. We taught artists and creative people working in those sectors on the basics of business, how to launch a creative business. And yeah, so that's what we did with that money.
I love it. All right. So fast forward like a little bit because you and I connected around the same time. I think we both started like creating content on LinkedIn around the same time, like 2023, right?
Yeah.
Kind of bridge the gap for me from like 2009 to 2023. What was your focus when it came to building your brand online before you got started on LinkedIn?
Okay, sure. So we had
I know it's like a really big
yeah, it's a big
number of
window.
years, but
But during that time, our business had a social media presence on Instagram, on Facebook. We shared really interesting creative ideas, things, a lot of thought leadership type of stuff, interesting projects around the world, case studies, break them apart, that sort of thing. So it was a lot of sort of educating the world on where design and art and all of these things fit into your business, fit into your life, fit into your community. So that was really the focus. Again, it was brand awareness, having us be sort of the experts out in the world, not so much for client acquisition, but validation so that we know what we're talking about. Right. So it had a different purpose. And then so kind of fast forward 2018 for me, no, 2019. I posted a picture of myself on Instagram to my 300 then followers, which were, mostly I thought friends and local people, but I had a public profile, and I was complaining about having been growing my gray hair out for about a year, and I looked hideous. And, it was one of those things where I had been really uncomfortable, and I just posted very candidly about it, and it blew up. It literally just took on a life of its own. And then, so that my personal account became this way where I could talk about all kinds of things. I could talk about my business. I could talk about being a woman in business, going gray publicly, what that meant, how that impacted how I showed up in business. I talked about how menopause was affecting me. So that account went from 300 to 97,000 by the time I came to LinkedIn in late 2023. So it was a pretty so I understood how to tell a story. I understood how to get attention. I've been doing that for years. But then in 2023, the reason why I came to LinkedIn was that I was coming out of a 3-year, like, total shit show in my life and in my business. We're coming out of the pandemic. So that's 2020 to 2022. Video had been shut down for us for those 2 years, just as it was coming back online in the New York market. My mom died suddenly, and then that was the big personal setback. I was finally getting my business back online, and then all of a sudden, boom, I'm now out another 8-10 months because I'm dealing with my elderly father, dealing with my own grief, just, so things are kind of on autopilot. And so it was in the early quarter, late first quarter, early second quarter that I kind of came back up for air. And I was like, "Fuck," literally. Okay, my business is we're in a pickle. Plus, what was happening too is 2021, 2022, a lot of our business was sustained not by COVID money that we received, even though it helped us a little bit. It was giving money to businesses to spend with us. So not
Mm,
only were we starting to see that they were running out of money, so now
right.
2023 coming around, a lot of the types of things that had gotten us through were starting to drop off. And so we were starting to see that shift happening. And that's really when I said, I'm going to reach out to my network. We'd already been exploring personal brands as they pertain to employer branding, which was a big part of our revenue, doing employer branding for businesses. And I already knew that they were important, but I hadn't really thought about it for myself until I came to LinkedIn and I could see what other people were doing. And I put forth some of those, like, half-ass efforts, like what I'm talking about. Just go out there and just do it. I'm like, "Girl, you know what you're doing. You have no strategy. You need to dial this back, get your act together. You need to, like, compress time and do this right because you stumble out of the gate here. This isn't going to work for you." So, that's what I did.
Yeah, so it's interesting though. You have this audience of 100,000 people on Instagram. What made you decide to start LinkedIn from scratch?
Well, so Instagram was a very different audience, and this is why it's so important to have every good intention with how you grow that audience of who those people are, what they are there for, what they want to hear from you. So over there, it was a lot of I talked about my business, but I never sold them. I never sold directly to them. I did sponsorships. I had lots of brand collaborations, worked with some really big agencies and, did some wonderful work, got paid for those efforts in many instances, book things and magazine articles and all of this really great stuff. But I wasn't selling an offer of what I did to that audience because my offer at the time was business branding, videography, employer brand storytelling, corporate storytelling. So the audience itself really wasn't built to buy what I had to offer. So that's where it made sense for me to let's go to LinkedIn. We can start from scratch. Then I'll find my way back to this audience because I've got plenty of people building brands over here, but I've got to do it in a way where I can show up with more strategy behind it.
Got you. Okay, cool. So, what did you learn from, again, building an audience of 100,000 followers on Instagram that you carried over to LinkedIn when you got started? Again, you were talking about on Instagram about the whole like gray hair thing. When you came to LinkedIn, I mean, like that's to me, that's a significant like part of your brand. Like as much as my hat is part of my brand, like we kind of have a similar thing happening
Yeah.
with that.
The thing that I brought was show up. And the thing is what I brought to Instagram is how I show up in my life. Anybody who meets me, I am candid, I am plain, I am straightforward. What that doesn't mean is I am not bold or rude, but I speak very honestly, and I have no problem having tough discussions. I have no problem calling people out on their BS or bringing things to the table that we need to talk about, and in a kind way. And that's what I knew worked over there, because the most I was talking, I didn't word that very well. I think my most prolific writing came during COVID, because I couldn't just talk about gray hair when the world was shut down, when people are dying, when there's all this kinds of stuff. It felt like gross. And I had so much more to bring to the table. And I knew that I had the ability to have some of that conversation. What I didn't want to do was start fights or get into certain types of conversations, because I didn't have the emotional bandwidth to have those kinds of conversations on my phone. Yeah. Responding to people, that just wasn't for me. So I was careful about the types of things that I would bring up and what I would say. But what I did know resonated, because people would say it over and over. You shifted my way of thinking. You always bring honesty and candidness to all of the conversations and everything that you share. And I knew that that would resonate on LinkedIn, because it just resonates in life. It's like why wouldn't it resonate in LinkedIn?
And I think that's one of the things that really sets you apart is the fact that you could tell it's no bullshit. Like you
Mm,
could tell it's very straightforward, it's very honest, it's raw, you tell a lot of stories. It's impactful, and you're right. Like there are I like content that makes me think a little bit differently. Right. And you check that box for me as a content creator, right? As somebody that's not approaching it the same way as everybody else is in the freaking world of AI. I mean, you're working now with, high six figure, seven, even like eight figure brands, right? Or executives that are just getting into building brands and everything like that. How are you helping people right now stand out in this freaking age of AI and all of the generic content that we see out there on LinkedIn, especially?
yeah, so that all boils back down to getting to the heart of their why they're doing what they're doing. Where does that come from? And so it's getting to them to understand their origin story, so that that can get woven through all of their content. We start there. Every single personal brand that I build starts with getting comfortable being seen, getting comfortable being heard, getting comfortable with being paid, whether through money or some other ROI from putting that effort out there and putting that IP out into the world. So we start with that. And I work with people who are deeply invested in having the work that they do tied to a higher purpose. They don't always come to the table with a real complete clarity around their purpose or what it is that and how to articulate that. That's where some our work together happens. Some people are quite clear on that. And then we bring that connective tissue together. But that's really the foundation. And that is what makes for unique positioning. And that's how I build positioning. It comes out of that value origin story, and something that I'm building out now. It's a framework. It's called your value DNA. And it's a set of very four distinct um, features that bring that up, that nobody can duplicate. It's not possible because of how it's built and where they're coming from. And that's the thing that I've been building into the positioning I'm doing, and that's what brings the distinction.
Cool. Do you want to dive deeper into that, or are we like still working through it, or is it like a secret or what?
It's not a secret, but it is something that I'm unveiling to the broader public in my upcoming August workshop. So I'm not inclined to necessarily unpack exactly what it's made of, but I will say
Mm,
that it's through three distinct lenses, and each one of them are unique. And that's what makes it not replicatable, rather than just saying, I help build 7-figure and 8-figure brands. Like that can be a fact, but how? How do you do that? Exactly. What is your methodology? How does that get done? What is this unique lens or perspective that you're bringing to the table that nobody else does based on your origin story? And that origin story is the thing that nobody can duplicate. Just like nobody
Hmm.
can duplicate my history and my 35 years and all the interesting things and experiences that I've had. The fact that I won $50,000 from Pepsi Refresh. The fact that, as a young kid, I never knew my birth father and he died in a car accident. How does that impact how I show up in the world, how I approach my work, how I live my life, how all of that? It's relevant. That's all part of my value origin story. And everybody has that. And that's the cool thing.
You obviously, of all the people that I've been following on LinkedIn that have been doing it really well over the last couple years, you are one of the most vulnerable when it comes to sharing your personal stories. And I know that that's something that you encourage, like with all of your clients. Obviously, you're just telling me that we're literally talking about the origin story right now, right? How do you get people or warm people up to the idea of telling their more vulnerable side on a very public platform as a way to help them to attract business?
Yes. So I am not one to say that every single vulnerable experience you've had in your life is part of the origin story of why you're doing what you're doing. So what we do is they share what they're comfortable sharing. It's a pretty vulnerable experience that we go through together and they tend to share is if you can identify where it fits into your methodology, where it fits into how you show up in work, how you show up in life, when they see that connective tissue, it becomes easier. And when we can connect the dots, why it matters to their audience, to their potential clients, to their work, that's when it gets easier to tell that story. If you've got some random story, and I'll share like a super extreme one, so let's just say you discover that some extreme thing about your husband, your spouse, and you just go blurt that out into the world while you're still fresh and going through it, or maybe you're still not totally over it, or you haven't gotten their permission. No, that's just private. Now you're just airing out dirty laundry. that you know that that's not really it. So a lot of the things that I share, I've done so much healing through it, and the way that I've talked about my experiences, it's because I've gone through and I've gone through the healing and I'm on the other side of a lesson. That's what makes it so easy to share. And I've been able to see where it's relevant. And if I have something that I feel like, oh, geez, that's a thing I feel compelled to share, but I don't know why it's relevant to my audience, I don't share it until I can connect the dots. It's just not going to happen.
Yo, I just wanted to take a very quick break in the action here because I just realized something crazy. 85% of the people that are watching our videos on YouTube are not subscribed. This is what happens when you actually get smart people to look into your analytics. So if you are enjoying this content and you want more practical advice and tips on how to grow your brand and your business with video, please hit the subscribe button. I do truly appreciate it. And let's get back into the interview. So what do you think then about the whole idea of like building in public, which is essentially kind of sharing things as you are kind of fumbling through and figuring them out for yourselves, right? Because I think that there's obviously something to that strategy and it's something that people use too. So how do you separate what you can share as you're building in public versus sitting on some things?
Okay, so we've never been at a point in time where building in public has been more critical. And why I feel that right now is because we are going through it, especially here in the United States, but I think that it's impacting us globally because the United States has such an impact on the rest of the world in how much upset that we have here, how volatile our market is right now and what it's putting out into the world. You've got AI coming in, you've got tariffs, you've got so much instability in the market right now, and I'm calling it. It's only getting worse. It's going to get worse before it gets better. And so now the human aspect of what we're doing in our business is where we will build trust. And building in public is how you do that. Now, it's nuanced, just like when and where and how you share those super personal stories. It's the same thing. You can it's a delicate dance of when and where is it valuable, how much. You don't need to give away all your trade secrets, you don't need to give away every single struggle to the point that you lose trust in your audience, that you make them nervous, right? Because you could do that inadvertently. People, I read posts all the time where I'm like, oh boy, you are breaking down trust right now, you are no longer building trust because you've crossed a line. And that's where I find the just start, just right, just, lob stuff out there where it can be reckless and a bit dangerous if you're not running it through a strategic lens of why are you putting that out there? Are you putting that out there just because you think it's going to go viral? That's absolutely the wrong reason to put it out there. You want to put it out there because it's absolutely relevant for your audience to know this, and you completely understand how it fits into your strategy overall.
Got it. No, that makes perfect sense. When you are looking at a piece of content, what are your kind of non-negotiables for it?
Okay, so my non-negotiable means what is its ultimate goal? So it could be a combination of these things. Is it purely for sales? Like, am I purely selling something? Am I trying to build trust? Am I trying to deepen my community? Am I trying to uh, explain a framework which helps to build my authority? So it has to have those goals, and it can check all those boxes at once, or it can check one of those boxes. So it has to have that KPI associated to it. And then on the other side of it is like, what is the ultimate call to action? So I try to work inside of 90-day strategies, because that's really the only, I mean, been a proven sort of window in business. There's a reason why we have quarterly check-ins, like, that have been around since kind of the beginning of time. We're not doing it just because that's the way it's always been done. That's the amount of time that we need for something to put something out there, let it ruminate, get some feedback, like test it and see, okay, where are we at with this? Is this still true? Do we need to shift? What do we need to do? Are we getting out of it? So that's why I work in this kind of 90-day campaigns. But that's the basic kind of checkbox that it has to have. And it always, always, always has to be relevant to my audience. And there always has to be a piece of me inside of it, a piece of my story.
One of the things that I feel also really stands out with your stuff is just the visual aspect of your images. Everything is very unique. You're not doing the same tweet image that everybody else is doing, or if you're doing selfies, like you're doing like your own style on it. So how do you kind of replicate that strategy that you're doing to stand out with your visual like imagery with the clients that you work with?
With my clients, so for one, I think it it would be fair to point out that, for one, I'm a trained designer. That's what my undergrad degree is in. That's what a big majority of my career has been inside of, like, brand strategy. I'm a designer. I'm a creative person. I'm a photographer. I'm a skilled creative. So I have an upper hand on that, in all
Sure.
fairness. But for my clients, what I try to create for them is something that is replicatable, or if they're going to hand it off to a designer, where it can stand out and be unique, and it is an extension, their visual identity is an extension of their brand identity, that it's speaking the voice and it's mirroring and matching how they want to show up in terms of what they have to say and their messaging and how they're positioned out in the world. Are you positioned as premium? Are you positioned as something that's very down to earth and approachable? Are you, because you could be both of those things, but we need for it to be able to articulate that visually, but we also want to be able to replicate that. It's very important. And even my visual identity in the last month or so has evolved, and there's very distinct reasons for why it's evolved right at this
Yeah, I
point.
like it.
Yeah.
I like it. Every single post looks like it's like a page out of a magazine. That's how I look at it right now. Again, you had that style before with like your kind of funny captions that you would do. What's really interesting, and because everybody is copying everybody else, right? Taking inspiration, copying, whatever you want to call it, right? How do we take that and do it your own way so that like it's not the exact same thing? Because I used to get frustrated big time with selfies on LinkedIn because I'm just like, none of them have anything to do with what the post is about. So it's just like, you just like putting a random picture of yourself, like eating lunch or like in your office to like a story. There's no context. They didn't go together. So like, that's like was always the most frustrating thing, especially being like a video guy who likes to talk on video. And when people say, oh, I add these selfies because it makes it feel like I'm humanizing my brand. And I'm like, well, talk. That would be more humanizing than like you just attaching like a random photo. But what I like about your stuff is that it's way more intentional than that.
Yes, I have a visual storytelling aspect that happens in my visual content, but unless you're working with a designer or you have a higher capability to produce content like that, it's going to be difficult. And I think that's why the average person who's not a designer tends to rely on selfies, because it is one of those things that you can do yourself. You can do pretty easy, and it's you. Like, it's not anything else that can be grabbed off the internet. It's not a stock image, so it's you showing up. I think where the effort can happen is creating a system, because that's what I do for my clients. If we build a brand identity, there's a system, there's a visual language. So if you use a selfie, use it with this type of an image. If you have this type of post, this is your template that you're going to work inside of, so that there's a visual language that happens inside of their identity and the way that that shows up. And the reason why my brand evolved was that I was kind of really feeling that, even like with my bubble things, I got kind of tired of people tagging me in, oh, that looks like Alana, because it was something that people saw, they liked, and they just started using it. And that's that kind of borrowing where it shouldn't be that easy to brief. So that's why my visual identity, I've opted to go with something that's a more layered, more complex. It's going to be more
Yeah.
difficult for people to pick up and duplicate. And not to mention the effort.
Yeah.
It's one thing to just put a chat bubble on something and say something inside of it. It's another to take it to the
Yeah,
degree. I think.
I'm sure it's a lot more effort to do what you're doing now with your imagery. I get that. Let's vent about what's bothering you on LinkedIn, because I know there's a lot of stuff like, I don't know, just we've been on LinkedIn for 3 years now and we've seen like, the platform just kind of, give us some problems when it comes to reach and engagement and
Mhm.
impressions. And then we've got the AI comments and all these things, right? Take a minute and vent and tell me what it is that's bothering you most about LinkedIn and like how you're handling it.
Yeah, so I had a a harsh drop back in late February, early March, like 40 over 45%,
Same here.
and it did not come back up for months. To the point, I
Mm.
also had a stretch in June where I lost hundreds of followers in a 2-week period, and it was impacting. And once that starts to happen, it impacts your reach. So it's this weird kind of catch 22 that it's difficult to get out of. And it's not it didn't happen like slowly over time for me. So it wasn't like people were growing tired, because I reached out to LinkedIn. I said, is there a flag on my account? I showed them the stats, like, this drop is hard and it's not coming off, and you can see it. It just went shoo. And they opened up an investigation. They did that back in March. They said, well, we can't see anything. And then it happened again. And I think it was June. I can't remember. And I got the same kind of, sorry, nothing is wrong with your account. Like, it's your content, and your people just are tired of what you have to say. And it's like, wow, okay. So maybe they are. I don't, because every other effort just wasn't working. But I will tell you, this is what happened simultaneously. The first week of July, and I can't pinpoint it, but I had a shift in my messaging, a shift in my content, a shift in what was not my positioning, but what I was focusing on in how important positioning was. The fact that our market is volatile and people are seeing these pinches everywhere. People are losing their jobs. They're not getting high. Like there is a lot going on out in the market. So this starts to dial up. I had the subtle shifts happening in the visual identity, but simultaneously I pulled a Chrome extension. I didn't pull it off. It got pulled off because my credit card on file didn't work. So
Mm.
they canceled the account and said you need to update your card, which was really weird because there was nothing wrong with the card. It just didn't work. So they canceled it. I didn't know that. My content went like this, like straight up.
Whoa.
Uh-huh. I feel like it's anecdotal, but I just don't think that it's coincidental. I mean, it happened the exact same week. My content hadn't been going enough for there to have been that kind of shift. I could see if that had been kind of gradual, but I mean, you look at my stats and it's like, it's a, it's a line that goes really hard. So I do think that there's weird things with extensions, certain extensions that they may not completely ban you, but I think that they impact with their algorithm change. I happen to think that that particular extension, I could be totally wrong, but that's my story and I'm sticking to it right now.
All
But one
right.
thing that's really frustrating about this platform more than any other platform I've ever, even on Instagram, is I feel like they're just constantly switching up what they're doing. And that makes it very challenging as someone who is paying to invest on this platform. They're saying that it's not for creators. They're not really providing good tools for creators, which would be stats. Stats are important when you're creating content and you're putting something out there. It's social advertising. For paid advertising, if I didn't have my stats, I would spend a nickel. Like, so it's the
Right.
same way on this side. If you want people to be putting content forward, we need to be able to measure the KPIs on the back end. So they kind of contradict themselves a lot as a platform in terms of what do they actually want us doing, on how do they want us using this platform. It's not clear.
I've been through it with other platforms and everything with kind of the dip and reach and all that and algorithmic changes and all these things. And ultimately, I think what it comes down to, I lost a giant amount of reach on Instagram at one point too. And it was at the same time that they started with boosting posts. And it's the same time right now on LinkedIn that I'm losing reach or whatever it is at the same time that they started with the boosting of posts. To me, the idea is ultimately that they basically want people to start paying for more reach. And every time people or platforms are looking for money is typically when they're going to start to reduce organic reach. I think that's the excuse that LinkedIn is just not telling everybody right now. There's some frustrating things, but ultimately the platform is still better than any of the other ones out there, in my opinion. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So the platform as a company has its own issues, but I think that my probably some of my bigger issues are how so many people are choosing to show up with
Agreed.
the AI comments. Like I kind of that's if anything we're going to get me to want to tap out, it's that because it's like you put so much effort into your content and the way that people are showing up, like that part is people who used to show up with such quality comments and engagement. I, it- they've hired VAs or they're using the AI themselves. And it's just sort of like, I've just lost so much respect for a handful of people. And it's like, that's just like, I don't like to be that person out in the world, but
I know, totally. No, I agree. It's kind of sad because I mean there are people that pop in that I've never seen before and they'll pop in with their AI comments or whatever. And I've just been deleting and blocking people because I don't want that engagement on my posts. Like I want everything to be legit. Then there are people that, like you said, that have been in my network for a long time. And again, they've either decided to use a VA or they're just, they have some sort of automated AI system. And like, there's been a couple of people that I actually reached out to and I was like, hey, I'd love to stay connected to you, but I'd appreciate it if you stop commenting on my posts.
Yeah, oh, I have not gone that far. I usually just I just delete it. But one thing I have
Yeah,
noticed
no,
is
no,
I
I've gone
started
that far for a couple people. I'm like, you comment every day and like, it's not helping you. It's not helping me. I'm like, go find some other place to leave
good
your
for
AI
you.
comments.
Good for you.
Yeah.
And the other thing I've noticed is that, pods you can recognize a pod, right? If somebody's in a pod. It's a very specific style of posting, that the number of engagements, the number of shares, the quality of comment,
Very
like,
consistent.
yeah, it's very consistent. And there's definitely, and the growth is like super fast, right? So they must have, in my mind, they must have different goals in mind in terms of why they feel like that look works for them. I'm not sure. But the other thing I've noticed of late is that you've got profiles that are not going full on pod. This is what they're doing because LinkedIn rewards reposts. They reward them heavily. And this is how I found it. This was before Favicon did their most recent update, is the one that they just announced this last week. There were some creators that had like knocked me down. Like my Favicon ranking was like in the toilet after like the whole March thing and like losing followers. It was just super down. And then so I started looking at like, who are these people and where are they coming from? Like what is going on with them and why are they coming up? And I go to their profiles and they'll have like 20,000 to, sometimes 30,000, sometimes 50,000 followers. And their content will not have thousands on every one. It'll be thousands maybe once a week. And then 100 reposts. And so, but it's the reposts, or they'll have the low engagement, but it's the repost that's getting them the reach on
Mm.
the post. And so that repost is like kind of putting it out there, and it's tricking the algorithm to serve it up to more people. It's not that the reposts are getting them individually reach, or not reach, but like followers.
It's the repost crew. I got it.
Yes. So
Interesting.
this is how, and until LinkedIn can figure that out and boot those people for doing that inorganic boosting of their own content, this is what I would say double down on. Create content at least once a week that people want to repost. Because the repost, when I look at my impressions, it's the content. This is the other thing too, is that when people can hang time on your content, and I've noticed that my new visual identity creates a lot of hang time. That creates
Mm.
more impressions and more reach. But so does the reposting. Anything that you can create for your audience that truly feels shareable, whether it's because it's useful or because it's important for people to know, that improves your reach. And if you can do that a few times a week, you'll fire up your the algorithm for your content a bit more.
Interesting. Cool. Well, Alana, it's always good to hang out.
Yes, I'm
I
glad this worked
appreciate you.
out.
Yeah, I know. I appreciate you coming on. And where is the best place for everybody to find you?
Yes, Alana Sparrow on LinkedIn, and Alana Sparrow is my hashtag on Instagram, and then alanasparrow.com is my website, and then thefoundrysite.com is my business website. That's the best place.
Beautiful. Keeping it like consistent across the board, nice and easy. I like
Yes.
it. Not like Alana underscore hashtag bomb. um, No, I appreciate you as always, and let's catch up again soon.
Okay, sounds good. You be well.